Hello, Social Work 321 class. Welcome to week 6. We're going to talk about talking and listening this week. And very good topic for those of us studying to become social workers and better understanding what professionalism is all about. I really hope that that's what you're taking out of this class. So I really like the old adage, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so stands to reason that we should listen twice as much as we talk, right? This is a good mantra to have as a social worker. You're not going to learn anything about your client by talking. You're going to learn by listening. This is a good skill to be practicing with your friends, family, colleagues, coworkers right now. Ask open-ended questions. If you have not read the book How to Win Friends and Influence People, I highly recommend it. It talks about how you become endeared to other people if you ask open-ended questions and really listen. We're going to talk a lot about listening and all these basic interpersonal skills. We're in chapter 6. We're bouncing back and going over some of these beginning skills. So we need a well-developed communication, tools in our backpack. And these skills are going to help us in all phases, in all aspects of social work practice. Communication skills are especially significant for engaging diversity and difference, right? We've talked a lot about that. Understanding diversity, having respect for different populations, and being culturally sensitive. These skills are essential for ethical and effective social work practice in the contemporary world. And I really love how your textbook talks about how we're never experts on cultural competence. It's an ongoing process. And what is a working definition of cultural competence? It's the awareness, knowledge, understanding, sensitivity, and skill needed to effectively conduct and complete professional activities with people of diverse cultural backgrounds and affiliations. So, no matter how good you feel like you get at being culturally competent, we are never fully culturally competent. Why? Because every individual has their own unique worldview. And to be culturally competent would be to actually exist as that other person, and we can't do that. So cultural competence is an ongoing process, a very important concept to remember. I think it's really interesting that the National Association of Social Workers has recognized the importance of cultural competence by giving it its own section in the Code of Ethics. And in the NASW has developed a set of indicators for assessing achievement of standards for cultural competence in social work practice. What are you chewing on, Daisy? Oh, she's chewing on a dog thing, so it's okay. Yeah, I just to kind of lighten the mood here a little bit. I'm very culturally competent in doggy language. Yes. You're never fully culturally competent, okay? But let me tell you a little story. The other day I was talking with my 5-year-old grandson, and I was telling him a story about my sister when she was a little girl. And my dad used to sing this song to her. He told her the whippoorwills were singing, "Lizzie is a pretty little girl." And my grandson said, "Oh, he spoke bird." And I thought that was so cute. Yes. So we have we have this whole world of Walt Disney that has this kind of new, cultural competency in animals. Yeah, or rugs or whatever. So, the framework for culturally competent services includes a delivery of services where we have 3 general categories or factors: consumer, provider, and system factors. So let's start out talking about culturally competent services. There are 5 interactional aspects. First of all is communication between the consumer and the provider. Kind of an interesting way to think about your client as a consumer. However, you are providing a service and you will be paid for that. So you definitely are working for your client, and they are consuming a product. You helping them work through their problems. If you do end up being an LCSW and being a therapist, which I think a lot of you will, and I hope you do because there's such a great need for that, that's basically what your clients will be, is consumers. Interesting way to look at it, isn't it? But part of what you learn as a professional, and part of what I really hope is your take home from this course, is that you are a provider. There is something, maybe it's not tangible, but you know, it's definitely a service that you're providing, and it's valuable. I really hope you understand that. What you have to offer your clients is of value, and so being compensated for that is appropriate. The second interactional aspect is shared decision making and respect for consumer preferences. So, when I was doing clinical work, I would often take young clients on walks as we talked through their challenges, especially if there were ADHD issues. Because what little kid wants to be cooped up in an office with a bunch of puzzles, right? You know, would start out. We might start out doing that to kind of build some rapport, but often there would be shared decision making about how the client wants to go about receiving the services, and what is going to work best for your client. And a good way to open up almost any session is, what do you expect to get out of this today? So the third is experiences leading to trust or distrust. You want to be trusted by your clients. You're not going to build rapport if there's not trust established. Experiences of discrimination within the system need to be rectified, hopefully, or at least acknowledged. You know, when I owned my agency teaching court-ordered domestic violence classes, one of the things that I recognized is that Hispanic individuals there was a higher likelihood that they were court-ordered into my classes, and we had a very high number in terms of how many are in the population compared to white people who were in my courses. And so I think that needed to be acknowledged and discussed. So linguistic competence. When I was teaching my domestic violence classes, it was very challenging. I speak just enough Spanish to get myself in trouble. And so bringing in someone who could interpret was something that I had to do often, because that's definitely something, for those of you who already speak a second language, that will definitely come in handy as a social worker. Some of the standards for cultural competent practice, according to the NASW, include ethics and values, self-awareness. Let's stop for a sec. Self-awareness. Why is that an important part of cultural competence? Are you self-aware? Are you competent culturally in your own particular subcultures? Are you aware of aspects of the subcultures that you're a part of, the systems that you're a part of? Being self-aware is very important, and I really hope that as you are getting your education, that that you recognize that this is an important part of what you're being educated about. You're kind of doing the inner work yourself so that you can let go of yourself and reach out to those around you. When I was a 14-year-old, I remember one of the seniors in high school told me that every morning she spent enough time to get ready for the day so that she could forget herself. She could look at herself and feel confident, and then forget herself and focus on everybody else in high school. And, you know, as social workers, that's what we need to do as well. We need to do the work, the self-work, to get past our own issues so that when we're working with our clients, we're not as triggered by their issues. It doesn't become about us. It's always about them. Cross-cultural knowledge. Do you feel competent about cross-cultural knowledge? I know in rural areas of Nevada, maybe we don't feel like there's that many different groups of people that we're working with, but we need to have a good general understanding of the different cultures around us. Do you have a good working understanding of the Native American cultures within rural Nevada? Again, the Hispanic culture, as well as the many different nuances of of European descent culture. I think the Basque population is very, very interesting in rural Nevada, and some of you descend from that, and that it's important to understand that. Researching your own personal background is a big part of that, which is why I had you do the genograms, right? So that cross-cultural knowledge, knowing, being aware of the different subcultures that you may or may not be a part of. How about cross-cultural skills? So being skilled, maybe you're not a Basque dancer, but you have a good working knowledge of why that's so popular in Elko, Nevada. Maybe you're not a cowboy poet, but maybe you have a respect for that. So service delivery. Why would service delivery be a standard for culturally competent practice? I have a 101 student right now who told me she's very interested in using nature as part of what she does as a social worker. And I think that's great. But I think also recognizing that your service delivery needs to be within the framework that we already have in place, and it can be a little bit challenging. Recognizing that service delivery is going to be different for different individuals. It's going to be perceived differently. So let's say you have a 13-year-old girl, female client who has an eating disorder. And so how her parents perceive the service delivery might be different than how the young girl perceives it. And she might be a little bit more hostile than her parents are about what you're able to do with her. And so recognizing that some of these challenges might be there, and that the expectations are going to be different, might be a big part of what your service delivery is all about. Empowerment and advocacy. So again, I know I've said this 100 times, but I will say it 100 more times before you're done with your degree. You are not there to give advice. You are there to provide a safe place for your clients to figure out solutions to their own problems. So social workers are all about empowering and advocating, and we don't give advice, we don't fix people. We are not superheroes ourselves, but we fit our clients with their own superhero cape, right? We help them recognize what their superpower is, which is how we empower them. We empower them through advocacy. As you learn to advocate for yourself, as you navigate through the academic process, you will better be able to navigate resources for your clients. You'll be a better advocate for them as you learn to advocate for yourself. So a diverse workforce. Social workers come from many, many different backgrounds. We don't all have the same story. There's no way. We all have a different story, and we all have a certain element of diversity. Even if you're raised in the same town as one of your colleagues, you're going to have very different cultural background, very different subcultures that work within your own personal system and your own global view of the world. Professional education. As I've said before, anybody can call themselves a counselor, but you can only call yourself a social worker once you have that degree and you've passed the board exam. So that professional education, it's a rigorous process, isn't it? I know there's a lot of reading to do. There's a lot of writing to do, but hopefully it's preparing you for a profession and to be able to present yourself as a professional. Language diversity is a big part of what we do. And I think that making sure, and most of us are Americans. We don't have more than one or two languages, but respecting people of diverse backgrounds, and especially those who are speaking English as a second language, is vital. And anytime I meet with a client or have met with a client that came from another background and is speaking English as a second language, I often say, I don't think I could do that. That I really have a lot of respect for someone who can learn another language outside of the one that they were raised with. And if you think about it, it is incredibly challenging. I lived in Guatemala for several months as a child, and so I learned Spanish as a young kid, and a little bit of Quiche, the Mayan language there. And so I've been told that when I speak Spanish, it's without an accent, but I've forgotten so much. And I learned it as a kid, and I just can't. It's so difficult to learn another language unless you learn it when you're younger. And so having respect for that, I think, is vital. Cross-cultural leadership, recognizing that within different subcultures there are different hierarchies, different respect for leaders. If you've ever worked with Native Americans, if you are Native American, you understand the tribal system is very unique. Having respect for that is important.